Three, two. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We have got to talk about these appointments that President-elect Trump is making to his cabinet and to the people he's placing in his orbit. Who are they? What is the philosophy that's driving all of this? Everyone's mouths are, well, everyone's slack-jawed. Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth. What? No women should be serving, in combat. Senator Tammy Duckworth said, "How do you think I lost my legs? Are you serious?" And then you've got Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. The reason, and these are not just presumptive nominees. If they use recess appointments, they can just go in, and they've got the votes. But we'll see if the women of the Senate will not be adherents to their party. We'll see if they're going to be adherents to principle, because there is talk that some of them are saying, you know what we want to do is we're going to stand together and stand against this, maybe. But we'll see. We will have to see. I don't know, but we've got a tremendous panel who want to talk about this today, because I don't know how we can have a Secretary of State who's been banned from travel to China. But that's what we got. And it's a war-hot cabinet. So many of us thought that this would be, well, not me, but he said that I would be a peace president. Kevin Gosztola, editor of The Dissenter, it's not working out that way. It's not working out that way. And of course, the Chicago Activism Hub. And Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. And Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds is also head of the Black Legislative Caucus. So glad that you're here. Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant social critic and lawyer. And so, but I want to start with this woman, and we're always so happy when we have her here, and so honored and so privileged. Indeed, in 2002, she was one of Time Magazine's Persons of the Year. She tried to sound the alarm on 9/11, and no one would listen. No one would listen. How does that work, everybody? I don't know how that works. She was exposing, she's a whistleblower, and she has continued to sound the alarm on the threats to our civil liberties, our civil rights, the things that really America has the power to correct. But will we do it? I don't know. And who are these people who we could have recess appointments? They might not even have hearings, Colleen Rowley. They might just get put in. And I just want to know what you think about this. And many people, I know you said, well, I'm not an intelligence specialist, but you are a retired FBI agent. So you come from a space that many of us don't really even understand. Help me to understand. Just give me the 30,000-foot view and maybe one or two of the appointments that really jump out at you. Because right now I've got whiplash. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know if it's Matt Gaetz. I don't know if it's Marco Rubio. I don't know if it's Tulsi Gabbard. I can just go, at least Stefanik. I can go down the list. Everybody has got me a little stunned. Colleen Rowley.
Well, I wish we were looking at this from 30,000 feet up. I wish we were Martians looking at it, and we would all be laughing our heads off. Because this is, it defies, it's insanity what's going on. How people are so full of hubris at the top that they think they can manipulate their respective bases. And now the MAGA crowd, the Make America Great crowd, I think would have whiplash, because again, many of them naively believed Trump's promises that he would be a peace president. He would get peace in Ukraine in one day. He had a secret plan, on and on, and I know a lot of people who actually voted because they thought, and they're against these wars. If nothing else, they're against them because of the cost. We're at $36 trillion of national debt. And actually, many of the conservatives now want it reined in. And they voted for Trump thinking he would do that. And of course, quickly, within 2 or 3 days, he's appointed a whole slew of people who are not going to make America great again. They're going to continue down the same path. If anything, they may even make it worse and lead us into World War III. So I thought also that it was funny because for like one New York second, when the news came out that Trump was not going to have Pompeo and Haley, terrible war hawks in this first administration, and people breathed a sigh of relief. They said, "Oh, good, he's going to fulfill his promise." and then, of course, within a day, we see this slew of nominees. I will just quickly comment on the one nominee that is a native Minnesotan. And so, I'm from Minnesota, and this Pete Hegseth.
Don't be brief. There is so much to unpack with this man who has been nominated to become Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. And here's the reason he can't. I think he will have a hard time making America great again, is because he's locked into militarism. So and it's also another, I guess, funny thing. I don't know if you want to laugh at it. He claims that he's no longer a neocon, that he learned from having himself been duped into the Iraq War. And of course, this is where he gets his kudos of being a military warrior because he served in Iraq. But he also says, he was misled. And he has to say that because Trump tries to distinguish himself from the Bush and Cheney administration. Obviously, Liz Cheney, who campaigned for Harris, they have to distinguish themselves from the neocon war hawks. And Pete Hegseth says, whatever I was a neocon, but I'm no longer. I'm a rehabilitated neocon or something like that. Now, in 2008, and our newspaper found this in their archives, but I remembered it. I clearly remembered it. He was a standout athlete at his old high school in Minnesota, in Forest City. And his high school in 2008 was going to host him to have a pep rally for the Iraq War. I think there was even a notion that he was going to bring in a tank or a helicopter into this high school. And of course, to indoctrinate high school students, war is great. That's kind of his worldview, is that, U.S. military is like the top thing. He's lobbied for U.S. war criminals to be pardoned by Trump, etc. So what happened was a group of activists made contact with the school, and he was disinvited from this big rally he was going to hold. And he had to go to the American Legion instead. And, that's where, if he wanted to hold a pep rally for the Iraq War, he should have held it initially at the American Legion. He shouldn't have tried to go into a high school. So that's something that when I saw his name, I went, oh my gosh, that Pete Hegseth, the guy who couldn't learn after 5 years that the Iraq War was based on lies, that it was based on WMD lies and tying to bin Laden, which had no connection. So here we go again. It'll be interesting because I don't think he's necessarily a shoo-in. Even some of the Republican conservatives have their doubts about Hegseth. And it's possible that some of them may think he's going to be hurting the military instead of helping, especially by, saying that women can't serve in combat, etc. They're having a heck of a hard time just getting people to join the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. They've had to lower the standards repeatedly, their weight standards, their criminal history, etc., etc. So I don't think it's especially helpful to say that about I don't know if it's half, but there's a good portion of the military now that are made up of women. And now they want to pick a Secretary of Defense who says women can't do the job. I mean, think about it. So he may not be a shoo-in, and we'll have to see. But he's just the one I'm most familiar with. The rest of them, again, when Trump said he wouldn't have Pompeo or Haley, I think you'd have a hard time trying to figure out whether whether Stefanik is better or worse than Haley, whether Rubio is better or worse than Pompeo. That's a fool's errand. It's like trying to count angels on the head of a pin, to figure out who's the worst of that group. And I just think it's funny that they're trying to pull it off now on the people. And I wonder if the MAGA people will now really feel somewhat betrayed, or at least that segment who naively believed Trump.
Well, do you think that they might be betrayed? Because now everyone is taking note of the fact that he is surrounding himself with hawks, with full-on hawks. You've got Elise Stefanik, who went and spoke before the Knesset. She wasn't putting America first there. She said, no, we're one. And many Americans are saying, wait. No, we have a special relationship. We support you. But the more that I see of what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, I don't support that. And now you're expanding. Whoa, Americans are exhausted. And even though they're changing the standards by which we can be admitted to the military, many of us are not meeting those. I think we're exhausted, and we have no money, colleague Rowley.
One of the things I would say Trump's criteria, and it's kind of understandable that his criteria is loyalty. It's his number one criteria. It's understandable in that during his first administration, many of the people he picked were backstabbing him all the way. Mm-hmm. FBI Director James Comey is a good example. Right from day one,
what did he do to him?
Yeah, he went in and threatened Trump that we're going to make it public, this Steele dossier, which falsely came up with some nonsense about peeing on a bed in Moscow or something. I mean, that was day one that Comey went in and threatened him. Bolton, Kelly, they all turned against him. So if you think about if you were Trump, maybe you would make loyalty your top criteria. But obviously, that's one of the criteria. I would say the second criteria is Zionism. Even Tulsi Gabbard, who was pretty good, she seemed anti-war, but in a very opportunistic way, she had to kind of pledge her Zionist loyalty to Trump in order to maybe have a chance of getting a position. So I would say those are his two criteria. And, again, I don't know. I think we're going to mostly continue status quo. The status quo that's been going on, which is endless lying, endless wars. You hardly can see where the intelligence community could be fixed, or the Department of Justice. I think that will be very difficult to fix these biased agencies that have been doing what they wanted to do for a long time, regardless of whether it's good for the country, whether it's true or not.
Well, I'm going to pivot to some other people, but I've got to come back to you. You told us, FBI Director James Comey coming in and threatening him on the first day. Well, that would make me wary, and I would want loyal people. And to me, anytime you go into a space, you want people who are going to be loyal to you. But why is Zionism so important to him?
I think there's a lot of reasons why Trump and Netanyahu, and by the way, this doesn't come as a surprise. This has been well known. He got all of his money from the Adelsons, who are the top, Israeli lobby. They are the top funders of the Israeli lobby in the United States. He was their third pick, by the way. Adelsons picked him third. But then the millions of dollars flowed in. He had him in the White House constantly. He changed the capital of Israel. He did everything for them already back in his first administration. And so that's one factor. And the other factor is Trump's son-in-law was actually a godson of Netanyahu. So, those close ties, again, it's not surprising that he's going to give a blank check. He's not going, that's something he never promised. He said he wants Israel to finish the job. As bad as this genocide is right now, I guess it can get worse, and he will, quote unquote, finish the job. So, but the other part of it, which is he said he would end the war in Ukraine. That was the unpopular war, or whatever, with Republicans because of the money. some people say that he's just pretending to be doubling down, because that's similar to what he did with North Korea in his first administration. He went out there and threatened to nuke North Korea, and then had a love fest with the North Korean leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's possible he wants to look like he's unpredictable, and he also wants to look scary. He wants to scare the people that whatever. And then, yes, he may make up with them as he did with North Korea. So that's possible with Ukraine. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, I know you got to go, but I mean, because he's in Texas, Colleen Rowley, and you got a lot of Texans who are into Donald Trump.
Yes.
Help me, but you also had Colin Allred, who made quite the showing, in his run against Ted Cruz. What do you make of this? Because some people would say, hey, he's for peace. And then everybody who is populating his space, they are the biggest war hawks that you can find. And they're feeding into a conflict that threatens to become, Colleen Rowley, a World War III, the conflagration in the Middle East. It just continues to just explode every day. More and more countries are being bombed and pulled into this every single day.
Santita, I want to agree with the sentiments that Colleen made, but I want to take it a step further. That this is not normal. These are the worst picks that we've seen in modern history in terms of the qualifications or lack thereof of people, questionable ethics, questionable morals and values, potential criminal activity. And so there's so many things that are hanging over the nominees' heads that people's heads are spinning. But I want to go back to this. Maya Angelou said it best: when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Why should we be surprised that Donald Trump is doing this? He has been nothing but a con artist who is very persuasive. I got to give it to him. He ran the table when me and most of the experts and polls didn't think he would do it. He did it. He pulled off the coup. And now, they say, so goes the victory, goes the spoils. He is now, as Colleen said, the litmus test is loyalist. It's not qualifications. It's not fitness for these very, very important positions for national security, for the safety and security of our country when it comes to intelligence and Department of Justice. But you're talking about him rewarding loyalists who will do his bidding. And so I'm usually not frightened about anything, and I don't fear anything because of my faith. But I fear for this country under a Attorney General Matt Gaetz. I mean, I fear for this country because this man is very unscrupulous. I've seen some of his rhetoric. I've seen how, and with the power that he will have as the Attorney General, with whoever they appoint as the FBI director, with the Supreme Court given carte blanche immunity, you will have a unchecked with a red trifecta with the House and the Senate. You have the potential for them to do just unimaginable damage to any of the people that they have opposition with. I'm not talking about foreign enemies. I'm talking about the enemy from within. And so I'm very concerned about, people that have stood up to well, might as well say President Trump, like Letitia James, and like our wonderful, amazing District Attorney Fonnie Willis in Atlanta. I mean, I fear for them if they don't stop their legal proceedings against President Trump. There have already been threats that have made about what would happen. you would have an unhinged President Trump with an unhinged Attorney General, with whoever the FBI director was. They would do whatever they wanted to do with no repercussions virtually. And so we've seen Jack Smith back away. And I would think that they would threaten if they didn't back away, that they would go after them. And so my concern is for the country. I believe that when it comes to Trump talking about reparations for white people that have been aggrieved, when it comes to I guess reverse discrimination, or this his assault on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this anti-woke agenda, I think that there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse for many of the people of color when it comes to mass deportations, anti affirmative action, anti diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. I think there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse. A lot of people are going to see the carnage and the harm, because the people who are going to benefit, make no bones about it, are the Elon Musk, are the Aldersons, who are the multi-billionaires, the multi-billionaires and millionaires. Those are the people that are going to get the tax cuts, but those tax cuts come with a price tag. They're going to cut programs, that Head Start programs, vouchers are going to be the way of life. So we're going to have cuts for public schools, cuts for programs that gave help fund free and reduced lunches. I mean, the poor will be poorer and the rich will be richer. And so, Santita, this is very serious. He's showing you who he is with these cabinet picks. And I think that he's going to ram them through, whether he does it through a recess appointment or not. I believe he's going to get his way. I believe very few Republicans are going to be willing to stand up to him and be statesmen and put country over party, because they fear retribution from him. And so let's see what happens if they get confirmed. But I'm assuming that there will be confirmations, and I'm assuming that these confirmations will wreak significant havoc among American citizens in this country. And lastly, I believe that this is going to be Putin's best friend in his second term. He's going to be even more open with his support of Russia. I believe that he's going to be an enabler of Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, we criticize President Biden, and rightfully so, for not having any conditions for arms for Israel or calling for a ceasefire. But make no mistake about it, Benjamin Netanyahu was rooting for Donald Trump to be the president, because he will have carte blanche to be able to continue his massive assault and atrocity. So yes, I'm very concerned. I think there should be concern about Trump's second term because of what the Supreme Court did, and now he truly is above the law. I don't want to hear this notion of no one is above the law anymore. Well, President Trump has shown that he is, and his cases, he will never spend one day in jail. He will never be held accountable, at least not for the next 4 years, for any of the crimes that he's already been convicted of, or the pending ones that were pending across this country.
Kevin Gastola, your thoughts?
Yeah, those are some really important thoughts there from Representative. And to me, when I think of what's going to happen over the next 4 years, I believe that we're going to be in for quite a wild ride. I mean, it's already obvious. It's already the whirlwind that's coming. Everyone's very overwhelmed. Something to say about Hegseth that Colleen didn't throw out there was that he's a defender of people who have committed war crimes. He's somebody who this was an asset, or this was a bright mark for Donald Trump, that he went out and campaigned for the freedom, and then Donald Trump granted pardons for individuals who were implicated in massacres, who were implicated in cold-blooded killings that even their own fellow soldiers had called out. You know how rare that is for somebody in your unit to actually call out somebody in their unit for that kind of bloodshed that they're inflicting, when that's what you're doing on a daily basis when you're deployed. You're in a war zone. You're usually invested in that. But the these are soldiers that went so far that their own fellow enlistees or fellow soldiers said that this was something that they should be brought before a military court-martial and charged and prosecuted. And so that's stunning to me, just to think of what we're going to maybe see here, because there's, as far as the military, maybe there's no rules of engagement anymore. Maybe they're going to say that in combat zones, there's not really anything that soldiers have to follow and abide by, because he wants that to not be something that hamstrings people. When I look at Marco Rubio, I think we need to also mention that when Donald Trump was in office during his first term, Marco Rubio was involved in boosting the coup that happened in Venezuela, and supporting a failed invasion into Venezuela. There was a coup that got off the ground in Bolivia. There was also a violent coup attempt in Nicaragua. There was support for imprisoning the president of Brazil, Lula. And then, of course, there was an increase and an escalation in the economic blockade of Cuba, which Obama had tried to end that policy. I think one of the gross failures and really horrible acts committed by Biden was to allow this to go back to, or to not do anything to overturn what Donald Trump had done to restore the kind of footing, the oppositional footing between Cuba and the United States. But this is really bad for Latin America to have a Marco Rubio as a Secretary of State, potentially destabilizing. I mean, even more. And we've already seen really grotesque figures like Javier Milei in Argentina rise up and be an even worse. I mean, if you could even imagine that somebody could be worse, more Trumpian than Donald Trump, but Javier Milei being even more cartoonish in the way that he acts, going out and holding a chainsaw in front of his people and talking about how he's just going to cut every single agency. There's this like crypto libertarian, wild west kind of mentality that they're just going to slash and burn down all parts of government right now. Whether there's even any law or process for it, I don't even know if they're going to go through Congress or the Senate to try and make any of these changes. I think he's going to try to do it by fiat in the executive branch. And so it's really tremendous to me to sit here and think about all that could happen. But then I also am fundamentally worried about us and how easy it might be for us to oppose him in the wrong way. I think we need to, I said this in the first hour, but I'll just repeat it again for the guests that are here, which is to say that I really believe that we have to consider how we oppose Donald Trump and not fall into some of the traps that we did in the first term, because some of the stuff that we've tried to do in order to oppose and take the air out of Donald Trump has gone absolutely nowhere. And it doesn't feed into, or it doesn't deal with why people see him as their leader or see him as somebody who can save them, or why they invest their hopes and dreams into a figure like Donald Trump. And, I firmly believe that we have to tackle head on the way in which the Democratic Party has failed to assess this divide, this rich and poor divide, but also to deal with the way that there's one set of rules for the rich, for these elites, and there's one set of rules for people who are, the bottom 99 to 99% of America, that they've allowed this, and that by not talking about this, by being afraid that they're going to alienate donors or those who have typically supported the Democrats and funded races over the last 15 to 20 years, that, in fact, they need to tap into some of that energy and some of that messaging that made Bernie Sanders quite a popular figure, that made Jesse Jackson a popular figure, that made other insurgent candidates in the party a disruptive figure, because that's the politics that people are looking for. And the fact that Harris ran without an appreciation of this, it's why we're here. It's why we're talking about these cabinet picks that are so appalling to all of us.
Mark Fancher, before I get back to you, Colleen Rowley, because I want you to respond to all of this, because there is a reason that we're here. There is. And here is where we are. Mark Fancher?
Yeah, I actually think it's a waste of our energy and time to be surprised or shocked by what the Trump administration or the will-be Trump administration is doing. As Representative Reynolds noted, when people tell you who they are, believe them. And the fact that there's chaos, there's confusion, there's lunacy, craziness, absurdity is no reason to be surprised. But I do think that it's beneficial for us to step back and to take a look at how and why he's in a position to do all that he's doing, why that happened. And I think it really plays into the broad sweep of this country's history. If capital comes in and capital is dominated by a small minority of the population, and they know that they have to control the rest of the population, then capital in this case made certain promises specifically to white workers and to poor whites. And that is that this is a white man's country, that they have the guarantee that they will never be on the bottom rung of society, that while they may be poor now, while they may be struggling now, they have the prospect for upward mobility, and that they will have a decent, maybe not a luxurious, but a decent standard of living. And so when capital becomes greedy and realizes that these workers who they've employed in their factories are demanding better working conditions and higher wages, and capital decides that, well, we won't bother with these people anymore. We'll take all of their jobs and move them to the Philippines and to other places, and we'll leave them unemployed, then that creates the beginning of a problem. It's certainly a problem for the workers, but for capital, then they begin to look at the fact that now they don't have any use for these people other than as a potential market. And so all the goods that they're manufacturing overseas, then they begin to market them to these people in this country, who buy all of the stuff that they get, but after a while the market is saturated. And not only that, this market no longer even has the income necessary to purchase these products anymore. So capital now has to find new markets. And so then it begins to look for new markets in Africa and Asia and Latin America and other places. And it starts to market those things even as they're beginning to plunder and steal the resources from these other regions of the world. And these other regions of the world don't take kindly to that. And they resist it and they fight back. And so now capital realizes that what it has to do is it has to force, it has to impose its will on these regions, militarily and otherwise. And so it has to send resources to suppress rebellion and resistance in other parts of the world. And in the course of doing all of this, they have, by design or by accident, established an empire. And the fate of all empires is that they collapse. And so what happens is that in the course of trying to dominate the planet through the use of human resources and money and other things and military power, then they neglect home. And so now they've got a whole lot of frustrated white workers. They don't have income anymore. They don't have opportunities anymore. Their basic needs are not satisfied and they're not met. And it leaves the way open for charlatans and demagogues and lunatics to come in and to tell a bunch of lies to this population and to scapegoat a lot of people who are not at all responsible for these people's misery. And so these white workers who are in pain, they hear the lunacy of a Donald Trump and they realize that the man is vile, he's vulgar, he's corrupt, and he's lying to them. They know that. But at the same time, they also are convinced that he's the champion of white people and that he deserves their allegiance, if for no reason other than that he's going to protect them. And so the fact that he finds himself in a position of now making these crazy appointments is just the manifestation of empire gone crazy. That empires collapse from within because they don't take care of home. These white workers' expectations were not managed. They don't take care of their basic needs. They don't take care of their basic military needs. And so now capital realizes that what it has to do is it has to force, it has to impose its will on these regions, militarily and otherwise. And so it has to send resources to suppress rebellion and resistance in other parts of the world. And Promises were made that were not kept, and they have given us Donald Trump. And now we're seeing the collapse of the empire. And people always tell me that I'm bringing the skunk to the party, and I am. The empire is about to collapse. You know, the thought that we can reform our way out of this, that we can somehow restore this, I think is a vain hope. I think that the only thing that we can do is to figure a way out, a way to build something that's different and new, because this is gone. The Democratic Party is dead. It has dead ideas. It has no prospects for reviving itself. The Republican Party's long been dead. And to the extent that it still functions, it's not really the Republican Party. It is now a collection of lunatics and far right ideologues and crazy people, you know, who once called themselves the Tea Party. And so it's not the same Republican Party. It's dead too. And so we need to take stock of it. The one thing that I think that we really do have to analyze is the fact that surviving all of this is the oligarchy which got us into this trouble in the first place. They're still standing separate and apart from what we know as the United States of America, and they're still calling the shots. They're still doing things. And before the election, for a long time, I predicted that neither Biden nor Trump would be on the ballot in November, because I didn't think that either of them were going to be competent caretakers of the empire. In Biden's case, I thought he might have been damaged goods because of his engagement in the genocide in Gaza, and that he was not going to play well around the world as the empire tried to pursue its agenda. I was half right. Biden wasn't on the ballot. Trump managed to get there. And I'm beginning to wonder whether, in the course of his going through the election and now taking his place, that he is in conversation with those who do control things in this world, and that these war hawks that he selected are not really necessarily his idea, but these are ideas that have been fed to him by people who are trying to make the best of a bad situation from the perspective of the oligarchy. That he talks this rhetoric about non-engagement in war. That's not good. That's not good for the powers that be. They need the wars. And so, if to the extent that Trump doesn't have any independent ideas or any real commitment with respect to national defense and intelligence and those things, then they're more than happy to come in and to tell him who it is that he should pick. I mean, why would he just pick Marco Rubio? Why? I mean, given their history. And so there has to be a reason. I think his priorities, his personal priorities, go more to his desire for revenge, his desire for a number of other things. And so he's more focused on other appointments. But I think that the oligarchy is, to the extent that they can, using and manipulating him in order to advance an agenda.
Attorney Mark Fancher, Kevin Gosztola, Colleen Rowley, you've got to help us to understand how this all really works. Because we could see from the Democratic primary, number one, the Democrats canceled the primary. So that's out the window. Then 14 million people voted anyway. They threw those votes out and gave us a candidate. So it's like the political process is broken, and you hear more and more people talk about that. And I'm wondering what we're seeing here with the Rubios, who is so aggressive. I'm wondering, like, how are you planning to go across the world with your hawkishness and your aggression and your obvious biases toward almost every place you'll go? How is that supposed to work? And will Pete Hegseth just be a cheerleader for the military? Is that what they're using him for? Because more and more people don't want to be in it. But he's so aggressive and so alpha male Maybe he's just the mascot that they need. What are we looking at, Colleen Rowley?
Well, I think Blinken, if you go back to Blinken, he wasn't a whole lot better in terms of they all have agendas. These people that are being appointed may have slightly different personal agendas. Kevin did a great job of pointing out the agenda for Rubio. He's really big on toppling the Latin America, definitely Cuba, Venezuela. So he's real focused on that agenda. And again, I doubt Tulsi Gabbard is. They have slightly different. The thing that they would have in common is they've had to pledge their utmost loyalty to Trump. And whether Trump isn't going to be making these big decisions, he does have, as Mark mentioned, he has a group of people, just as Biden did. Biden had a group of people, Sullivan and Blinken. They were making the decisions. And so what we've called the deep state or the establishment, whatever. And there's a lot of revolving doors in this, actually, even between parties, where these neocons went from the Democrat Party, initially from the Democrat Party into the Republican Party, and then back again into the Democrat Party, some of the top neocons. So you see that they don't even have themselves loyalty to an individual. They're in it for the power. And absolutely, Mark is right. As the empire starts to rot from the inside, by the way, we don't, our economic sanctions don't work anymore because we don't have the economic power to make the sanctions work. And so then you're having to resort to harder and harder military force, more brutality throughout the world. The torture just became, in vogue again for the United States. We can torture. We got all these laws that we thought stood as principles, and they just went up in smoke. I have a feeling we're going to see more of this. One thing that the Trump administration seems to have, this is a ridiculous notion. They think they can put a wedge between China and Russia. And, at this point with the BRICS, and the fact is we've driven the so-called economic rivals of the United States into alliances. Now Iran is in the alliance. Even Saudi Arabia is in the alliance. We are really losing. As our empire becomes more desperate to cling to power in the face of losing its actual real economic power, etc., you're going to see more and more desperation. And I think the worst outcome would be that we actually now head towards World War III. That there's a lot of intelligence and evidence that Iran may be planning now. Well, they've had a tit for tat for a while. Israel attacks Iran, Iran attacks Israel, assassinations, and now it's Iran's turn. And up till now, Iran has been very restrained and has just, done a pinprick. They haven't really apparently tried real hard because they were afraid we would start World War III. And then you get the whole alliances on both sides. So this is, I think, the worst outcome of our empire now failing. I hope it's a slower and a softer landing. Everyone can hope for a softer landing for this empire, that we all live here. We're all part of it. We can dissent and whatever, but we live here. And so let's hope for a softer landing. However, the tea leaves are actually now saying that if Iran strikes hard, Israel may launch its nukes. And you got Russia and China. Russia and China are not going to have a wedge. That's ridiculous for anyone in the Trump administration to think they can make a wedge between Russia and China. And now we have World War III with all of the nuclear superpowers on both sides on hair trigger alert, thousands of nukes. And, so all of these other issues that, the price of eggs, we during the election, we talked about the price of eggs in the grocery store. Well, the price of eggs in the grocery store is going to be the least of our problems if this comes to pass. And the Trump recklessness could easily put us there. I just hope that somehow he's bluffing like he did with North Korea. I know that's a desperate hope, by the way. I will admit it's a desperate hope, but I hope that that's the case.
Well, I'm wondering if it's, well, it is new. I'm going to keep hope alive. And I'm not being facetious when I say that, because that's what I've got to cling to. I mean, because Colleen Rowley, the fact is, people in his orbit, the people I've seen thus far, don't have any breaks. They do not care. They're speaking in their belligerence goes back to the 19th century. I'm like, they have not adjusted to a new reality. The BRICS nations, the colonized people, are now ascendant. We're moving into what will be, they say, the age of the African. The 22nd century is, if we're still here, because what did Einstein say? He didn't know about the Third World War. He said, but the fourth one will be fought with sticks and stones. So this one could be total destruction. And these people, when I look at what's happening with the IDF and in Gaza, they killed more than 200,000 people. They said at the beginning, we're not looking for precision. We're looking to take people out. That's what they're doing. You're dealing with people who don't care. They're just killing people. And now you've had Iran who said, now, America, we've heard you. But be very clear, if you continue with this, you're going to feel it on your shores. Did anyone hear that, Colleen Rowley? I mean, what does that mean if we're going to feel it on our shores? What does that mean? What?
Yeah. That's the next, and until, if you look at Vietnam, until Americans, more so than the cost of eggs, they have a hard time connecting the debt to the inflation. People have a hard time making these connections. But when there is a direct cost to the United States, and it's very visible, unfortunately, it will release all chaos. Because as Mark said, the scapegoating, this is what people like to do. They like to simplify problems. And instead of going back to what happened here and dissecting that, there will be a scapegoating situation. And, we might have a very serious civil unrest in this country, even if we don't get to World War III, just because of what's going on. I mean, let's hope that somehow we can avoid the worst, but I don't know.
Why would you think of civil unrest? Why?
Well, the polarization is so bad, and and just I wanted to follow up on Kevin's things of what we shouldn't do. Resisting this situation. Yeah, I think it was poorly done in the first administration. They made up the Russiagate lies, the Steele dossier. The FBI was made to sign on false affidavits to monitor people. I mean, this was, and by the way, CIA whistleblowers who actually made up stuff as well. Okay, so this was not the right way to do it. The right way it's a lot more difficult. I think it's what you're doing, Santita, which is educating people, uniting the people on the issue. I don't think there's anyone who wants to have World War III. I think it's probably 98%. Maybe Hegseth would differ, but I don't think people want to go into World War III. Mm-hmm. So we got to unite instead of polarize, and that, as Mark said, this polarization where the working poor class, and Trump was able to go out there, charlatan, and get the working poor, and basically flip the parties, because the Democrats used to try to represent the working poor, and now Trump was able to tell the working poor, I'm your savior. And that should be reversed. Honestly, that we need a new party to represent the interests of average Americans, not the wealthy, not the Zionists, not the intellectual elites, but everybody.
I absolutely agree with you. Maybe a second party, because to me it's the uni party. They said, you see the oligarchs are in charge, whether it's Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, who has moved into Mar-a-Lago. It's the same. They're playing the same game. And that's why I can't buy into. I mean, look, everybody, and sometimes people get upset with me. And Solomon Harris said he loves you because you're speaking truth. And it's true. Because we have to go beyond parties. It's a bipartisan betrayal. That's what we're dealing with, everybody. These people are not serious about you. They have thrown out, remember, in 2024, the Democrats who were fighting for democracy threw that out the window. You had no primary. They just announced casually, we're not going to have a primary. I'm like, are you serious? Then you throw out 14 million votes. Are you serious? How's that supposed to work? And how do you tell young people who are increasingly disaffected with this? That is what is the challenge, Colleen Rowley. Because these kids, I mean, I have nieces, nephews, and godchildren who have said, you know what? I thought Auntie Santita that Liz Cheney was a war hawk. I had this conversation with one of my little babies. They said that's what. So why is she a hero now?
Yeah.
Why? And one of these young people said to me, "How is it that she now that she gets a place of honor?" I mean, why is it that Kamala Harris didn't do a tour with Bernie Sanders? He's the most popular elected official in the United States right now. Are you serious? And when I look at Marco Rubio and what he said about these Palestinian people, 70% of whom are the people who killed, 70% of them are women and children. He said, you know, well, Hamas shouldn't be covering them. And so I won't stop until they're all eliminated. Wow. How is that supposed to work? This is appalling, and it is going to get us. I hope we survive it. And when I listen to talk radio, and when I would listen to Washington Journal every morning, to hear, as you said, the polarities in America. Americans are at odds with each other. Some people are thinking of not being together for the holidays because of how they voted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you serious? I mean, we're all working class people. I don't care if you call yourself a Republican or a Democrat or independent. We are united on that. We are united on not wanting to go to war with anybody. We're united with wanting this money to come back home to us. $36 trillion in debt. Where did that come from? It sure did not come from me. Kevin, I want some closing thoughts from you because I am really, and let me thank you both and thank the whole panel for being so provocative, because I want to, some people have gotten a little burnt with me because they feel that someone came on the chat and said yesterday that I didn't pull enough for Kamala Harris. I said I did, but I'm not an uncritical supporter.
Yeah.
I'm not going to back away from saying to you, where you are on Gaza doesn't work for me. Talking about the middle class doesn't work for me. Most people are not middle class. My brother, former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., said Americans are the poorest, are the best dressed poor people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Most Americans are driven into bankruptcy because they get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So many women find a lump and they don't follow up with a test because one woman said to me, I can't afford, if they tell me I've got cancer, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't afford it. I can't afford the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That's happening in America right now, everybody. So, Kevin.
Well, some quick stray thoughts that I have, but to leave people with, there's not a lot of positives in this moment, but I do feel it is a positive that the incumbent, which is the Democratic Party in Joe Biden, that their party lost and that there was a consequence to them allowing genocide to continue in Gaza. I mean, the voting, if you look state by state in those swing states, is close enough that if there's even 40, 50,000 people or more in each of those states that say, I'm going to sit home because I don't want to vote for somebody who's perpetuating genocide, that had an effect on who is going to be in the White House over these next 4 years. And now I realize that means that then Donald Trump is president because of our system, and that's not good. But I don't know. I don't think we are in a good place if the party is not held accountable. If people aren't voting against them because of that, if they're not showing that people in this country do care about what we're doing, And then to say, how is it that Donald Trump and JD Vance get to go around and pretend and act like they're the anti-war people, the anti-war voices? Why is it that Donald Trump's the one calling out Liz Cheney for being a chicken hawk and being so willing to go to war? Why isn't it Kamala Harris and Tim Walz who are getting up there and saying that it's wrong for these people to be so reckless about choosing when and where to start the next war? How, like, we need to contemplate that. Why is it this party doesn't talk about civil liberties? The Democrats don't care about surveillance, mass surveillance. And now you're seeing something we didn't get to, but it is actually something that makes me interested in what happens next with Matt Gaetz. He was for ending the case against Julian Assange, WikiLeaks founder. He's signed on as a co-sponsor to something called the Press Act, which could be, if it passed in the Senate, because it already passed in the House, the first federal shield law to protect reporters from having to give up their confidential sources if the FBI subpoenas them. They'd have to go through a more drawn out process to get to a reporter. So I say that. I want to give Colleen a chance to jump in before your show's ending. So I just leave another thing with the bleakness of the consequences that people need to sit in. We didn't get to climate. We didn't get to methane emission regulations that are going to leave. One of the hallmarks of Donald Trump's presidency was allowing all these forever chemicals and like plastics and all these things to seep into our water supply, and children being poisoned and things of that nature. We really need to be mindful of all the stuff that's going to be happening around us domestically. I know there's a lot of reasons to be trained abroad, but I think when Colleen talked about the unrest, mass deportations, how do people think families are going to just have ICE agents show up and they're not going to fight back? I believe communities are going to be fighting back against these ICE agents that come and try to take their family members away. And I think we're in for, seeing people really and truly resist this Donald Trump administration in a way that we never anticipated. The Muslim ban was fought tooth and nail, and they succeeded in the first few months of Donald Trump's first term in beating it back. I don't know what happens, but I don't think people aren't going to fight the government in a very aggressive manner.
Colleen Rowley?
Yeah, I hope that happens. I hope that we do are wiser and smarter in resisting a lot of these things. When the Republicans, including Trump, was the victim of mass surveillance, the victim of anti-free speech and censorship. He was the victim of censorship. How can he turn around now and say he wants to censor people? I think the thing that we need to make people realize is that we have laws, we have minimal standards for a reason, because we don't want to be the victims of torture. We don't want to be surveilled. And when you make these laws, it's not about us versus them and that we get to do anything we want, but if the laws are only for these others. I think that's the key message, is that we have to explain to people, if the wars are blowing back on us and there's really cost to us, explain that. And maybe some of the MAGA crowd will support and learn and also join the resistance. So I think that's the answer, is to get to grow the resistance and not to do it in a partisan way.
That's right. Because it really is, it's a bipartisan betrayal, everybody. And you know what I'm going to tell you? You remember Robert Strauss. You were not born then, Kevin Gosztola. Robert Strauss, 50 years ago, chaired both of the major parties, the Republican and the Democratic parties. Powerful people don't do parties, they do power. That's it. And
Exactly.
When you get in these halls, you in the corridors of power, you see they slap each other on the back and they have tacit agreements. You run it this time, we'll run it the next time. That is what they're doing. So everybody, this is not a bleak moment to me. This is a moment that is filled with hope for me, because crisis creates opportunity. I know we've had most of our iconic moments. Dr. King made his bones in an apartheid America. Reverend Jesse Jackson ran for president under Reagan, who was the Trump of his era. See, let me tell you something. This man opened one of his opening campaign events was in Philadelphia, Mississippi. It is known for that is the place where they killed Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. They don't have a bus station there. They don't have a train station there. But they did kill those 3 civil rights workers right there and buried them in the car, in the mud. This is, and Bernie just had it with the hypocrisy of the Democrats and the Republicans. And he said, I'm just going to run. And look at what he did. Now, we have work to do. We have work to do. You have a Congress to capture within the next 2 years. By 2026, 2 years ago from now, and less a week, there's a Congress you can get back. But in the meantime, you need to be calling the White House, calling all of your representatives, whether you voted for them or not, and let your feelings be known. Let them know you don't want a third world war. I don't care how much they want to turn Gaza into beachfront property. And you want those people to be able to go back home. Justice will be served, everybody. See, I'm a Christian woman. I believe in God. I know, Colleen, that God is real. And God is too wise to make a mistake and too kind to be cruel. This stuff is not going to work. And in order for America to truly be great, America must be just. Might makes right. Might does not make right. Right makes might. We will only be strong if we are just. That's what we've got to do. And we're the ones who have to make it happen. We keep waiting on someone else to make it happen. Stop that. We are the people we've been waiting for. We're it. And while we've got you, Colleen Rowley, who stood up to the FBI, I'm going to pull your ear and I'm going to get you on here as much as I can, because a lot of people have been inspired by you today because you stood up to the power structure. And we thank you for that. We owe you. And I thank God for you and your courage. Because in that moment, in the post 9/11 world, people didn't want to hear what you had to say. Although many of us knew something's not quite right about this story. We're the most impregnable, powerful nation on earth. How did this happen? All at one time. Are you kidding me? Thank you for your work. Now let's get to work. And let's have some people who put the children in the Mississippi Delta and their parents first. The people in Appalachia. People sleeping in their cars in California, if they have one. People sleeping up under these viaducts. All that money, I'm for all these special relationships. I want to help everybody I can. But you know what? I need that money right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I want America to be known for peace, not for war. Dr. King was killed on that. And you know what? My parents stayed on that, and I'm not leaving. If I'm the last person in the room, I'm going to stand up for peace. And you need to do that too. Every time you see a bomb dropped, you ought to weep. Because it could happen over here. And some people have promised that will happen to us. And maybe, I hope we don't have to feel it. I hope we don't have to have another 911 and another one and another one and another one before we get it. This happens to people around the world every single day. And you ought to be tired of it. You ought not want anyone else to remember where they were on their own 9/11. Stop it, America. Let's wake up and let's grow up. Kevin Gosztola of The Dissenter, you keep on dissenting and know that you have a home here. Colleen Rowley, you have a home here. But I know everybody else is trying to pull you both. Just know that you have a home here. And I have so much love and admiration for you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. May God bless you both.
Yep. Thank you.
Santita Jackson, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless you. And thank you so much, Colleen.